right, good morning, Rivertree. We're so glad that you are here this morning. We want to welcome everybody that is here on Lansing Ave with us and everybody that is gathered via the live stream. We are glad that you're here. Thank you so much for being with us. My name is Andy. I'm the lead pastor here, and we're looking forward to a great morning. You picked a great one to gather with us. I want to go over a couple of quick announcements. So you've got the current that is on your chairs if you're gathered with us in person. If you're not with us in person, if you're just with us online, you're going to want to grab a pen and a paper and write a couple of these things down because there's just some cool opportunities for you to connect with us. So the first one is our Food for Kids ministry, which helps provide food for kids at Da Vinci schools that may be at risk of going hungry over the weekends. They sort the food this coming Tuesday at 4:00 p.m. in the garage. And the garage is the building here on our property that is just around the parking lot from our building. So if you pull in that day and you're going to help, don't come to this building, drive around to the building. It looks like a garage, so you'll know exactly what we're talking about when you get there. Kristen Geis is right over here. She leads that ministry. If you've got questions, ask Kristen. All right. So, but that is this coming Tuesday. It's Tuesday, right? Did I say that right? Tuesday at 4 until whenever you are done. So, the other two things that I wanted to make sure that I highlighted that are in your current. The first one is our next Rivertree Connect event. If you're new to Rivertree, if you want to get to know us better, we would love to have lunch with you, and that is going to be on Sunday, March 20th. And so if you want to register for that, go to our website, rivertree.church/register, and we will make sure that we've got lunch for you on that day. The menu is going to be pub cheeseburgers, sliders that are going to be really good. And so we've got a guy named Chris who's our chef. He's around here someplace, but he makes great food, and he gave me the menu this week for it. And I told him he can't send me the menu that far out because it just makes me hungry. So if you're new, though, sign up, rivertree.church/register. The other thing that's going to be starting soon is our next round of our discipleship process. So we have a process that starts with something called Headwater, and this is a way for you to connect with Rivertree, to find out more about us, and for us to just equip you with some tools for developing in your faith. And so it's 6 weeks. It's on Thursday nights this round from 6:30 to 8. Childcare is provided, and it's right here at the Rivertree building. So that's going to be starting Thursday, March 24th. And again, you can register at rivertree.church/register. All right. And so you can read the rest of the announcements that are in your current. I know looking at the information on the ladies' paint pouring party, there are two different dates that are there. It is on the 19th. So on the 19th, and again, you can register on the website. All right, I think I'm done yammering. Only other thing is to just point out our giving box. We have a giving box in the back. You can put any offering that you might have in that. If you're using a cash or check, there's an envelope that is right. There's an envelope display that's right next to it. The other way that you can give is using our text-to-give system. Text the number 84321 and then put the amount of your gift in the kind of the line where you'd put the text information. And the first time you use it, there'll be just a very quick setup, but it's a really quick and easy system. And I just want to thank all of you. I know many of you took up the 90-day tithing challenge that we gave in January, and you've been doing just an amazing job, and it really does make a difference. And I'm excited about this coming year as we continue to minister to Jackson some of the opportunities that are there. So thank you so much for partnering with us in that. We are in a series called Placefulness. We're going to talk more about that, and I'm excited. We got a guest speaker this morning that you're going to love. But one of the things that we've been doing is we're learning about the history of Jackson, but we're also trying to learn some things about things that are going on right now in Jackson and highlight some different programs, some people that are making a difference. And there's a video series called Good Things Going Jackson that has been highlighting these, and we've been given permission to use these as a part of our series. And so we want to introduce you to one more program, one more thing that is making a difference here in Jackson this morning. Go ahead and play that.
Habitat for Humanity works with families in the low-income areas of communities, families that live with 80% AMI, which is area median income of the county that they live in, and we work with them to help them become homeowners. The idea is that we create self-sufficiency through homeownership, help them have the ability to have stability in housing, which is so important for families, And the way that we do that is we help them prepare to become a homeowner versus a renter. So many of our families that we work with have never experienced homeownership, sometimes for generations in their family. So renting can be a lot different than owning a home. And so there's a lot that they have to learn, not only in taking care of a house, but also financially. So they go through an entire financial counseling program where we get them ready to be able to handle a mortgage and buy their own house. A lot of people have the misconception that Habitat homeowners are given a house, but that's very far from the truth. They work very hard to earn a house. By the time they get in a house, they've put in many, many hours of hard work, education, and they actually help build their house, and then they purchase their house with a mortgage that we help them get.
So I can say that when I first joined Wells Fargo about 15 years ago, the first thing that I encountered was a Habitat for Humanity team that was already one of our existing groups. And since then, every year we've been involved with Habitat in different forms, helping different families all across Southeast Michigan to just have a better environment and an opportunity to thrive in the community. So our team has actually had a lot of opportunities to work on site. We've learned that our team members can paint, they can roof, they can do all kinds of different things. So everybody walks away from it really enjoying the opportunity to help the family.
The families that I've had the opportunity to work with and see them go from struggling to pay rent in maybe substandard housing to owning a house that they can be proud of and that they can afford and that they know is always going to be there for their family. That is something that you can't even imagine what that would feel like unless you either experience it yourself or you can watch a family experience that. There are so many things that they can focus on once there's stability in their housing. They're going from having a place to live that they're always going to have, that they're not going to have to move every other year or every few months or whatever the case might be, that they know is going to be there for their children when they're growing up and even after they're grown. And it causes them to be able to focus on things like their health care, their education for their children, better transportation, all of those things that if we've never had to deal with not having them, we take for granted.
We're really excited to help. In the U.S., we're helping with $8.1 million philanthropic effort this year, and that's over 350 homes for homeowners. And internationally, we have over $1 billion commitment through the year 2025. And why Jackson? Well, Jackson is really hometown America. I grew up in a similar town to Jackson. It's very exciting for us to be able to help both in the big cities and the communities like this to really make a difference.
We have grown children of Habitat homeowners here in our community who are now reaching out and wanting to volunteer and help with our mission. And that's such a great thing to see. And it really does trickle down not only through the generations of the families that benefit from having a Habitat house, but also all around that house. We also do some neighborhood revitalization as well, some repairs on houses, and that itself has a trickle-down effect where when we clean up or fix a house, we see neighbors coming out and pitching in and then doing some things on their own houses, and it just spreads through the neighborhood.
I hope it gives the kids an opportunities that they might not have seen before, to have new friendships, to build new acquaintances, to have opportunities in the school district that maybe they wouldn't have had before, and to give the mom some peace of mind that she can really be there for her kids.
There are so many opportunities to help. There's many opportunities to give back. It could be in your time, it could be with money, it could be just bringing people together. That's one of the things that Habitat does really, really well, is bring people together. It's even in our mission statement. We bring people together to build homes, community, and hope. That's part of our mission statement. There is so much that can be done when we work together, and even just a little bit of working together by a lot of people can go a long way. So no matter what you have to give, if it's time, if it's money, if it's just support, whatever it is, reach out, give, work together. It's amazing how it makes you feel just being the one that does that. But then when you see how it impacts somebody else, it's incredible.
All right. Awesome things happening in Jackson. If you'd like to stand with us as we move into this time of worship, I don't know what you have going on in your life. I don't know what situations you're going through, but I know that in these 3 songs this morning, God is going to speak to you. Whether it's looking for his guiding light, whether it's praising him for what a good father he is, or just being so thankful that we can come to his throne with a heart of worship this morning. In my wrestling and in my doubts, in my failures, you won't walk out. Your great love will lead us through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Oh, you are the peace in my troubled sea. In the silence, you won't let go. In the questions, your truth will hold. Your great love will lead us through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Oh, you are the peace in my troubled sea. Stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard the tender whisper of loving, Lord, we need before we say a word. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Love so undeniable, I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable, I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into my love. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. When the music fades and all is stripped away, and I simply come, longing just to bring something that's of worth that will bless your heart. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things appear. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry of endless worth. No one could express how much you deserve. Though I'm weak and poor, all I have is yours, every single breath. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, to the way things have been. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I made. When it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I made it, when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. It's all about you. 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 I'm coming back to the heart of worship, when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I made it, when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. It's all about you. 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 about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made it. When it's all about you, it's all about you, Jesus.
I want to read to you from the book of John, chapter 1. This is the Message paraphrase. It says this: the Word was first. The Word present to God, God present to the Word. The Word was God, in readiness for God from day one. Everything was created through him. Nothing, not one thing, came into being without him. What came into existence was life, and the life was light to live by. The light life blazed out of the darkness. The darkness couldn't put it out. There was once a man, his name was John, sent by God to point out the way to the life light. He came to show everyone where to look, who to believe in. John was not himself the light. He was there to show the way to the light. The life light was the real thing. Every person entering life, he brings into light. He was in the world. The world was there through him, and yet the world didn't even notice. He came to his own people, but they didn't want him. But whoever did want him, who believed he was who he claimed and who would do what he said, he made to be their true selves, their child of God's selves. These are the God begotten, not flesh begotten, not blood begotten, not sex begotten. The Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. I want us to pray for our neighborhoods this morning. And what I want you to do is I want you to kind of turn and face your neighborhood as best you can. All right, so whatever direction you think that is from here, I want you to turn and face your neighborhood. And I want you to just reach out your hand. And I want us to spend a few moments just praying to yourself. I want you to pray for your neighborhood. I want you to pray for your neighbors. I want you to pray that we would be able to be that flesh and blood presence of God where we live. Let's pray. Lord, as we are in the midst of exploring, we are where we are for a reason. And Lord, I thank you that we have the opportunity to be that flesh and blood presence of Christ in our neighborhoods. And Lord, I pray that even this week that you would open opportunities for us to be that presence. Lord, I pray that you would challenge us, that you would open opportunities for us to connect with our neighbors, to get to know the people that are around us, those people whose houses we pass in our cars all the time. Those people whose houses we pass as we walk our dogs and as we ride our bikes all the time. Lord, I pray that you would help us to be your presence, that you would give us opportunities to build relationships. Father, I thank you for putting us where we are. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. You may be seated. Kids, if you want to head to Kids Zone, now would be the time to go. So we've got some leaders who are going to get you there. Kiara is walking out the door right now. She will get you where you need to be. All right. You guys are going to have an awesome time. My daughter was talking me through some of what they're going to be doing today and some of the fun they're going to have, and it's just going to be, they're going to have a blast in there. So here's what I want you to do, those of you that are here in the room. We are in a series called Placefulness, where we have been looking at the fact that God has placed us where we are for a reason. And what does it look like to really own that? And we've started with a sentence to help us kind of latch on to this concept. And we're repeating this every week. And so I want you to repeat these with me. And I know you might feel goofy doing it, but I've got the microphone. So too bad. Like, that's just the way it goes. So the sentence is this. The sentence is, I am here for a reason. And what we're talking about is the fact that the word that we emphasize in that sentence changes the focus of the sentence for us. So the first way that we can say the sentence is by emphasizing the word I. It emphasizes the word, the person in the sentence. I'm here for a reason. So here, we're going to try this together. Here we go. Okay. So, and that is the personal taking on of this statement. You can also emphasize the word reason. I'm here for a reason. And here's the thing. When I was practicing this, like every week of the series when I practice this, it's hard to say this sentence emphasizing that word and not sound angry, right? Like, you sound like the person that's I'm here for a reason. Like, every single school board meeting that Nick Rush has been in for the last 2 years has had that person in it, and we're praying for you. Like, seriously, we are, because there have been lots of those people in this season. I'm here for a reason. But we're not saying it in an angry way, but this is owning the purpose of the sentence. So here we go. We're going to do this one together. I'm here for a reason. Okay. But the third way that we can say the sentence, the third emphasis is on the word here. I'm here for a reason. Let's do that one. I'm here for a reason. Rather than emphasizing the person, rather than emphasizing the purpose, it emphasizes the place. What does it look like to be people that embrace a purpose of placefulness, that we own the fact that God has put us where we are on purpose? That the people that you encounter, the people that are a part of our lives, our coworkers, our friends, our neighbors, the community around us, the fact that we as a faith family are in Jackson is not by accident. So what does it look like for us to do some of the hard work of trying to understand our community, to understand this place that we live in so that we can better be an expression of Christ here in this place? And so that's what we have set out to do in this series. And I'm excited because this morning is going to be different in a very cool way. We've never done something like this before. This morning we have a guest speaker, and it's Jackson historian Linda Haas. And she did an amazing job the first gathering. I'm excited for you to be able to learn from her this morning. She is the author of 3 books on Jackson history, including her most recent one, The Hidden History of Jackson County. And I read the book getting ready for this series. It's a great book. She's got some available on a table in the back. I would love for us to buy them out before they leave, because it will just help you, again, learn more about this place that we live. But can we just give a warm Rivertree welcome to Linda this morning?
Thank you. I'm actually gonna. Greetings, Rivertree. Can you folks hear me? Great. Well, I am so glad to be here and to share this glimpse of Jackson's history, looking at some of the trends, looking at some of the major activities that brought us to this place here today. And so if you think of the present as a door, what we're going to do is we're going to open that door, and we're going to look behind it, and we're going to see what brought us here. Am I getting a little resonance with the other? Okay, very good. All right. So what we're going to do today is look at, I've divided Jackson's history into different sections. And because we're going to start with Jackson's very beginnings, I'm going to call it Jackson's Genesis, because we're in a church. We're going to look at immigration trends. We're going to look at some religious trends as well. And again, just look at some of the forces that brought us here. And since I'm also a Christian, when I finish a section, I've asked my husband, Ed Haas, to cap it off with a Bible verse that sums up that section. So without any further ado, we're just going to dive right into the first slide. And since Jackson's history is tied to Michigan's history, I'd like to start with Michigan's genesis. In 1787, the state that we call Michigan was part of what was called the Northwest Territory. And this territory encompassed Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin. And interestingly, one of the hallmarks of this territory is that it abolished slavery. Notice it is north of the Mason-Dixon line. Around 1820, Congress provided incentives for settling this Northwest Territory so that it could be populated by enough people to be divided into states. So to further this goal, Congress offered large tracts of land at cheap prices, and this created the pull factors for a diverse group of people. You've got entrepreneurs, you've got poor adventurers, wealthy farmers wanting to buy up large tracts of land at a reasonable rate. And I'm just going to pause and just look at this slide for a minute. If you look in the upper right-hand side, you'll see the green area that is what was the Northwest Territory. You just get a sense of how vast this was. At this point in the territory's history, there was a very rough breed of people that were here in this wilderness. You've got trappers, a picture of one in the lower left. You've got surveyors who are plotting out boundaries for the states. And by the way, did you know that the beginning point for every boundary in the state of Michigan starts in Jackson? It's in Henrietta Rives Township. Just a little curious side note there. So one of the adventurers that was attracted to this Northwest Territory was a man by the name of Horace Blackman. And we're ready for, he's anticipating. Awesome. So in 1829, Horace hired a surveyor and a Native American guide to help him explore the Michigan Territory, which, by the way, was described as a vast, untamable wilderness. And it was advised that no one really go to this place because it was just, untamable. But this fearless trio, Horace and his two other explorers, traveled from Detroit to what we now call Jackson by horse until they got to the middle of the state. And here they found Native American trails all converging in a central spot. They found fresh water. They found rivers. They found trees. This sounds like an idea for a church name, does it not? They found fertile land. So he purchased 160 acres at $2 an acre, and he came back the next year with his extended family, including the DeLands, and they settled what is Jackson. This is the genesis of Jackson. This is what brought this town into being. This all happened 8 years before Michigan became a state. So just to quickly explain this slide, we see Horace here in the upper left-hand corner. And we see on the upper right a bronze plaque that marks the spot where his explorers first camped in Jackson. Has anybody seen this plaque, by the way? If you have, raise your hand. Okay, it is at the intersection of Trail Street and Jackson Street. And it's just to the west of the river that he crossed to get into Jackson. That's the actual spot where they camped. One of the first things that they did was build a cabin, and that picture right there it's from the Ellis Sharp Museum, but it captures pretty accurately the rustic nature of their first dwelling. 15 people dwelling in one big room, cabin. Must have been a very interesting and lively group there. But this topic of exploration and the challenges and the afflictions that came with it was not easy. Bring to mind a verse in Ecclesiastes, which my husband Ed will read now.
I set my mind to seek and explore by wisdom concerning all that has been done under heaven. It is a grievous task which God has given to the sons of men to be afflicted with.
And I guess in some sense, we're all still exploring. In a way, I think that we're exploring new opportunities to advance Christ's kingdom. But we're ready for the next slide. So Jackson was settled primarily by East Coast New England residents like Horace Blackman, who tended to be white and Protestant. But the dynamics of the town changed over time, leading to social and religious diversity. And the first foreign-born people to settle in Jackson were Irish, who were hired to build the state prison. Their presence and their need for a church that they could call home led to the establishment of St. John the Evangelist Church, which is Jackson's first Catholic church. African Americans began populating Jackson in the mid-1800s. Many were freedom seekers propelled north to escape slavery. Some were free. I've had the privilege of connecting with several descendants of freedom seekers that were escaping slavery and came into Michigan that are still living in Jackson today. Germans and Poles arrived in Jackson in the late 1860s. And as an interesting side note, Germans were so populous in Michigan that German was the second most popular language in the state in the mid-1800s. So just to explain the slide for a little bit, at the top we see a map of the United States with the brownish beige swath showing where the Germans settled for the most part, the Midwest and beyond. And actually, this map should show that it also extended into southern Michigan quite heavily. In fact, Manchester today has one of the heaviest concentrations of original German immigrants. The green areas were where Irish immigrants settled, mostly East Coast and West Coast. And just as a side note, how many people here today are of German ancestry? How many people are of Irish ancestry somewhere? You see, that's what I'm talking about. That's what brought you here to this place now. Lower left, we see a picture of an early African-American church. In fact, one of the earliest African-American churches in Jackson. It was founded in 1865, the year that the Civil War ended. It's the second. It was called the Second Baptist Church, today Second Missionary Baptist Church, which is a sesquicentennial black church still ongoing today. That was their early congregation in the 1900s. On the right, you see a picture, actually an archival postcard of St. John's Church, a Catholic church, back before the roads were paved, dirt road, so that's quite an early postcard there. So this influx of is just, Jackson was a melting pot of different faiths, different ethnicities that led to where we are today. Next slide. Just a quick snapshot of where we are today. According to one source, and it's called bestplaces.net, only 30% of our population identifies, Jackson's population, identifies with a specific denomination today. And the breakdown goes something like this. About 10% identify as Protestant, 12% identify as Catholic, and almost 1% identify as other, Judaism, Islam, whatever. But I think the real and untold story behind these statistics is that almost 70% of the people don't identify with any specific faith, which is either a troubling trend or it could be fertile field for evangelism, depending on your point of view. Some of the scripture verses that come to mind when I think of the many Christian denominations, and I also think of the opportunities for evangelism, are found in 1 Corinthians and Matthew.
In chapter 12 of 1 Corinthians, verses 12 through 13, states, "For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For in one Spirit we are baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and all were made to drink of one Spirit." And in Matthew chapter 9, verses 37 and 38, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into the harvest."
And I believe that Rivertree is among those laborers who have a very rich harvest here in Jackson. Next slide. So now we're going to dive into another related topic, and that is points of historic conflict as these different religions, ethnicities, and races coexisted in this little spot called Jackson. Sometimes this diverse group got along, sometimes it did not. And I've selected one high-profile example of friction that has to do with early race relations and how the conflict played out in newspapers. So here's the background. In the early 1800s to 1865, Jackson had newspapers with different views on slavery. There were several anti-slavery papers, including the American Citizen, shown on the top there. And this paper called Slavery an Outrage and called for residents to support anti-slavery politicians. The pro-slavery paper called the Jackson Patriot, shown at the bottom, went on to obviously expound on that point of view. And just to pause here for a minute, at the top you see on the left a picture of Charles DeLand, editor of the American Citizen. He was such a passionate anti-slavery editorial that, I mean, his pen was just deadly. We would almost call it slander today, the terms that he used about slavery and slaveholders, but he definitely got his point across. And when the Civil War started, he surrendered his pen and he took up arms. So you could say he traded his pen for a sword on the battlefield. In the middle there you see his motto, Principles and Men of Principle. And on the right, one of his editorials, which is very hard-hitting. On the bottom is a picture of the pro-slavery paper, editor rather, Wilbur Story, in one of his editorials. And I know that you must be thinking, because I just said Michigan's in the Northwest Territory that prohibited slavery. How is it possible that there's a pro-slavery people, let alone newspaper? And I think that you have to recall that no rule or law is ever followed 100% anywhere you go, even though the Northwest Territory prohibited slavery. Also, the New England settlers who came here in Jackson were primarily anti-slavery, but they weren't the only ones here. There were Southerners here that brought their beliefs as well, and there was a wide swath of people in between these two extremes that generally believed slavery was wrong, but they didn't want to agitate too much about it. They didn't want to see these anti-slavery editorials because they were afraid it was going to lead to civil war. So they were kind of a silent majority, if you will. So conflict between these two forces, pro-slavery and anti-slavery, boiled over into violence, and we're going to talk about that next. Next slide. So in 1850, pro-slavery forces burned the newspaper printing office of the anti-slavery newspaper, destroying the business. Not to be deterred. How many people here think Charles folded shop? I don't see any hands raised. He did not. He scavenged what he could. He kept his newspaper going, and he doubled down on his anti-slavery rhetoric. And then lightning struck again, and his office was burned a second time. And I don't know about you, but I'd like to imagine if I was living back then that I would expound on this topic. But honestly, if my house was burned twice, I would go to bed at night wondering if they're going to burn it down with my family in it. I might be tempted to step back at that point. How many people here think Charles stepped back? He did not. Charles moved to a fireproof brick building nearby and tripled down on his anti-slavery run. He was married, he had children, he had a lot on the line. No, this is a man with a fighting spirit. And by the way, when his offices were burned, it was just a little bucket brigade putting out the fires. It wasn't like it was today. So the column that you see on the right is an actual column written by Charles after the second fire, when he said, basically, I come to you now writing from an office that is still smoldering with font, that is the metal type that they use for printing, still steaming from being burned, but I'm putting together the message as best I can, and I will not be silenced. So that was Charles. And just to shed some light on the pro-slavery paper's kind of frame of mind, their motto was, it's a newspaper's duty to print news and raise hell. So, seemingly they were very effective at that, in doing that. So I get so excited about this topic, I forget where I am. Okay, so here's where we are. The debate on slavery, and ultimately about the inherent dignity of all races, brings to mind a verse that was often quoted by Underground Railroad activists and by newspapers at the time, and Ed will read that for us now.
I'll take you to Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 and 27. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heaven, and over the livestock, and over the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them.
Yeah, all from one blood. So, ready for the next slide? So, this topic of racial friction was not chosen randomly. It's especially pertinent to Jackson because it led to a political upheaval that in turn led to one of Jackson's claim to fame, the founding of the Republican Party. And this party it was founded July 6, 1854, and it had as its main mission at that time the termination of slavery and the preservation of the Union. And just to explain this slide here quickly, in the right lower, you see one of the original announcements that let people know that an assembly was going to be held in Jackson for this purpose because the political parties of the day weren't doing anything on slavery. And a group of Jackson residents just said, basically, this cannot stand. We're going to do something about it. So I don't know what we're going to call this party. Actually, original plans were to call it the Fusion Party because they wanted to fuse anti-slavery people from all different parties. They didn't end up with that name, but this is the notice that called people to Jackson. This is the actual original notice. There were thousands of these printed. For history buffs, this is archived in the Bentley Historical Library in Ann Arbor. It's a very yellowed, weathered piece of paper with a hole in the top center where it was nailed to a tree as their form of announcement in the day. But just the passion that ripples through in this announcement gives you a sense of people's sentiment about this topic. And basically it says that the time has arrived in the North to protect liberty from being overthrown and downtrodden by the slave power. So that gives you just a little sense of the passion behind this. On the left, a picture of an artist's rendering of the first Republican convention under the oaks in Jackson, a huge swath of land, about 40 acres under actual oak trees. The land is now mostly residential, but there is a small intersection of that very property, the intersection of Franklin and 2nd Streets that is dedicated to this event, is called Under the Oaks Park. There are still oaks there today. Top is a picture of the park with the boulder there just to commemorate what happened. It's, you know, like it or not, it's a part of Jackson's history, and I would say it had a very noble genesis, shall we say. So this led to the election of Abraham Lincoln, ultimately led to the Civil War, which did, in fact, shut the door on slavery once and for all. Next slide. Just to add, advancing civil rights was something that had yet to take place, but this was an important first step. So where are we today? Today, we are looking at the political landscape as the political parties have continued to change. Michigan had a reputation of voting Republican because, after all, they're the home state of the Republican Party, so definitely they wanted to keep that thing going. But parties evolve, times change. Michigan had a strong history of voting Republican, but today it is generally considered Democratic. This map shows how the political allegiances play out in terms of geography, with red representing counties that voted Republican, blue representing counties that voted Democratic today. And in the 2020 presidential election, 50% of Michiganders voted Democratic and 47% voted Republican. And this topic of evolving or changing governments brings to mind scripture, verses that remind us, no matter what, God is in control, and we should keep our ultimate allegiances to Him, and in the process stand united in Christ. And Ed will read those verses now from John, Matthew, and Ephesians.
Chapter 19 of John, verse 11. Jesus answered him, "You would have no authority over me at all unless it had been given you from above." Matthew 22, verse 21. Jesus said to them, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." Ephesians chapter 4, verses 4 and 5. Maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to one hope that belongs to your call. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all.
Thank you. Next slide. So I'm going to switch gears once again to give you a brief snapshot of common occupations in Jackson and how they've evolved over the decades, and it does shed light on some of the current occupations still today and where they came from. So in the early 1800s, Jackson began as a mostly farming community. In fact, an 1895 publication boasted that Jackson grew more corn than anywhere east of the Mississippi. The prison, which officially opened in 1839, also was a major employer and a big part of Jackson's growth, and in fact continues to be. In fact, in the mid-1800s, a business could contract with a prison to produce goods at cheap prices. And because of this, prison labor was commonly used in making furniture, boots, cigars, and even baking, among products. And on the top picture of the slide, you see a farm in Springport Township that was featured in an 1874 Atlas of Michigan. So Jackson was a kind of a prominent farming community back then. You get a sense of the agricultural feel for the day, with a horse-drawn carriage and the cows basically right in the front yard there. And in the bottom, you see a picture of the prison bakery. And I don't know how I feel about eating baked goods produced by the prison. I don't know, but I'm glad that the prison was used, and it continues to be an important employer for us today. Ready for the next slide? So in the early 1900s, dominant industries in Jackson included railroading, coal mining, and corset making, and vehicle production. Regarding the railroad, at one point in the 1800s, there were more rail passengers traveling through Jackson than any other city in the state of Michigan, because Jackson is kind of at the crossroads. It's a perfect hub and midway point. On another note, Jackson's coal industry was so bountiful that it led to a pretty steady production of electricity. And as you all may know where I'm going, as things evolve, it led to ultimately the birth of Consumers Energy, which is still with us today. This is what it evolved from, popular coal production in Jackson. And also for decades, Jackson was a major automotive producer, renowned for producing a car called the Jackson. So over the years, our overall economic stability has kind of ebbed and flowed depending on the health of these industries. Obviously, Jackson no longer produces coal or corsets, and the use of the railroad has diminished due to the automobile. I'm just going to pause for a minute and look at this postcard. I love it. The top left, you see really a clash of two cultures. You see the horse-drawn buggies lined up in front of the Jackson Depot. You've got the flesh and blood horse giving way to the iron horse. But even the iron horse gave way to the automobile there on the right. And so these industries, some of them no longer with us, but leaving their footprint on Jackson. And today, Jackson is a very big second-tier automotive supplier. These are some of the forces that brought that into bear. Next slide. So today, the most common job groups in Jackson by number of people in them are production occupations, and we're perfectly geared up for that because of our automotive and other vehicle production that we had in the past. Sales and related occupation, an office and administrative support occupation, and Jackson's major employers are listed at the bottom there with Henry Ford Allegiance, Consumers Energy, and the Michigan Department of Corrections making up top 3 employers. Just on a personal note, as I look at Jackson's economic situation, I find some troubling statistics. While the U.S. average unemployment rate is 6%, Jackson's unemployment rate is 9.6%. And to me, this hints at not only the need for an outreach for needy community members, but it also tells me that Rivertree is on the right track in terms of a lot of your activities, your backpack giveaways, your food giveaways. This gives you some insight in some of the ways that you can build the kingdom in Jackson and where the needs are. I think you're on the right track based on everything that I've looked at, and I think probably even more yet to go. So one Bible verse that reflects God's feeling about work regardless of your occupation, is found in Colossians, and Ed is going to read that now.
From chapter 3, verse 23 and 24. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Jesus Christ.
So last slide, next slide, last slide. So just in conclusion, I hope this gives you a feel for how the history has paved the way to some of the trends and some of the dynamics that we see here today. You are here for a reason. These are some of the forces that have brought you here at this point, at this time. And I hope that Rivertree can get a sense of how you can plug into some of these needs and trends, whether it be the fact that 70% of the people don't claim a faith. I mean, to me, that presents a huge opportunity for Rivertree. Or whether 10%, almost 10% are unemployed. Again, another door that you can go through to expand the kingdom. So these ever-changing dynamics bring to mind Daniel 2:21, which is on the screen, and I believe Ed will read now.
So Daniel says, he changes times and seasons. He deposes kings and raises up others. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge.
So just in conclusion, thank you for this opportunity to just share this with you. I really appreciate your attentiveness and your enthusiasm, and my hope and prayer that Rivertree will continue to do the great things that you're doing, to look at these opportunities and just go through every open door that God gives you. Thank you for an opportunity to talk to you today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Linda. I do want to encourage you to take the opportunity while she's here. She'll be hanging around for a few minutes. Pick her brain, ask questions if you've got questions. I would love for you to be able to interact with them. There are some copies of the book, the Hidden History of Jackson, that are out there. I believe they're $20 a piece. Am I saying that right? Okay, $20 a piece. And feel free to stop by and grab one on your way out. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you have a fantastic week, and we'll see you next Sunday.